Hi, I'm Jonathan Ray from the Kawasaki Racing Team.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Jamie Chadwick.
Hey everyone, I'm Bradley Smith.
Hi, I'm Joanne Zacco.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wright.
Hi, I'm Seb Morris.
Hi, I'm Dan Linfoot from Honda Racing, British Superbike Team, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hello and welcome to Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester and this is our special look back at what happened in the 2022 Rolex 24 Hours here on Motorsport Radio. Joining us tonight live, we have our special expert panel. Ross McIntyre joins us. Hello, good evening, Ross.
Hello, Lester. Pleasure to be here as always. And we got rolling eventually when you got the microphones live. But yeah,
I've not done a live show in a while. So.
As you said, looking back at the Rolex 24, simple as that really. Very, very good race, very entertaining to watch. Lots of drama, lots of action to talk about, and lots of discussion points as well. This is kind of really getting the circuit racing scene going in 2022.
Connor Jackson joins us as well, regular on Motorsport Radio and still the Motorsport Radio website editor.
Indeed.
I didn't mean that. That didn't sound as bad. What?
Wow, that's I'm getting fired next week, guys. You heard it here first.
Sorry.
But no, fantastic Rolex 24 as always. As Ross says, this is the one race that always starts the year. I remember doing night shifts covering this event. A real classic and a great way to start the year.
And the editor of enduranceandgt.co.uk, the experts, the person who will be heavily leaning on for expert opinion and facts tonight. It's Andy Lloyd.
Good evening.
How are you?
Yes.
Have you back in your sleep patterns now?
Pretty much. The last 2 weeks has been quite intense. What with the Raw and then leading up to the main race itself. But as the guys were saying, a really exciting start to 2022. As we said last week, there have been races in the Middle East. They've been fantastic. But really, the start of the proper season at this level is the Rolex 24, and what a race it was.
Indeed, yes, the biggest race of the year so far. It was, and we did have a Brit on the top step. It was in the DPI class after 761 laps in total. I think that's right. It was the Meyer Shank Racing of Tom Blomqvist, Elio Castroneves, Simon Pagenaud and Oliver Jarvis. Fantastic win, Andy Lloyd.
Well, yeah, what I think amazed me about, we're going to talk about all the classes, but the DPI class was so incredibly close and so amazingly competitive. And to see the Meyer Shank team, who last won in 2012, they had a tough race a tough season last year. They come into this race, they needed a good result. They brought Ollie Jarvis on board, who's got a pedigree as long as your arm. Audi, Mazda, and I think he probably saw the potential in the team more than maybe the team did themselves. He saw a real grit and determination, an excellently managed team who've been there and done it and know how to run a 24-hour campaign. And I think, I wouldn't say he won it alone, but I think bringing that level of experience into the team was a massive benefit to them. And of course, Elio Castroneves. I mean, the guy's got a career going back decades. He's in his mid-40s now. And as far as he's concerned, he's still pushing. The most amazing finish and fantastic to see that team come out on top. But of course, they only narrowly beat the number 10 car, the Wayne Taylor Racing Konica Minolta car of Ricky Taylor, Albuquerque, Rossi and our own Brit, Will Stevens again. So that's two Brits on the podium. Chasing them hard to the line, and they did not give up. So it's a very, very competitive DPI class for its final year of competition before we go to LMDH in 2023. Yeah,
certainly. And your thoughts in the aftermath on this Wednesday evening after the race. Andy, your thoughts overall? Yes, we will go into detail about each class and stuff, but your overall takeaway, how you're feeling?
I think my overall takeaway was, what a fantastic race and what a fantastic organisation and what an amazing start to the season. I read an excellent piece written by Marshall Pruitt on Racer.com today, talking to John Doonan, the head of IMSA, with all the work that has gone in since his tenure started. This is the start of his third season in charge of IMSA. There's been a number of changes that have materialised and evolved over the past 2 years. A number of changes indeed to the structure of the whole way the Rolex 24 is run, moving the Raw to the week before rather than 2 or 3 weeks before as it was before, and a real rush after Christmas and straight after New Year to get the trucks and the cars down to Daytona. The fact they've introduced the qualifying race in the Raw as well, which I think the jury's still out on. The reason why that was introduced with points available was to prevent teams from effectively sandbagging during qualifying. So they said, well, okay, let's make qualifying mean something. I mean, on a 24-hour race, if you're second on the grid at the start or sixth on the grid at the start, overall, it's not going to make a huge difference. But they wanted to bring that competitive spirit into qualifying. So I think the jury's still out on that, but it was certainly a very interesting move. The fact we had a packed grid of 61 cars, I think, says a huge amount, bearing in mind what economies and what sport in general has gone through over the past 2 years. The fact that they've moved away from the GTE class and introduced a larger, expanded GT3 or GTD, as IMSA calls it, which was, I mean, as we'll discuss later with the finish in the GTD Pro class, very well supported, an excellent move and a large grid for that. The fact that John Doonan himself moved closer to the ACO, there was lots of friction and lots of discussion when the ACO were laying out what the top level of motorsport was going to look like as we move forward in the 2020s. And it looks like IMSA were getting marginalised. Well, now they're not. Now we've got a way forward with Hypercar and NMDH to be called GTP next year. That brings back some memories. The GTP class that can both compete at Le Mans. That's fantastic. So I think this race was not only a sporting spectacle, I think it was an organisational and evolutionary triumph, and I really think this sets us up not just for a good season in 2022, but I think really this sets up the next generation. This sets up the next 5 or 6 years.
That good, was it? Wow.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Yes. Connor, do you agree with Andy's assessment? I mean, it was certainly a great race throughout, and certainly towards the end. Throughout. I mean, what did you make of it?
Well, I can certainly attest to everything that was great about the race. I'll admit that I don't know as much about the technical behind the scenes stuff as Andy does, so I will leave that judgment to himself. However, from an outsider's perspective, certainly the race produced the same level of competition and competency that I expect from any other race. And while I'm not going to disagree with Andy's statement that it's a new generation, at least for a casual fan, it doesn't seem that way. There is no big there didn't appear to be some massive presentation, as it were, I should say, that was displayed this year compared to, say, 2021's edition. Of course, saying that, as you say, it's the end of the DPI era. That was made very clear to a lot of people before this race, and it is sad to see them go. And I suppose, like a lot of motorsport series that we won't name here, they've ended an era on a high with a class that has ended on such a note where you sort of almost question why it's moving on from this. But of course we understand why, and we understand the next generation, and I really hope, as I said, the hypercar concept goes very well on that front. In terms of the representation of the British drivers that I wanted to sort of point out, as Andy says, we had obviously Blomqvist and Oliver Jarvis win the race, but also we had Will Stevens second for the Konica team, and JDC Miller had Richard Westbrook, who we often forget on our scene because of how prominent he is on the American side, also on the podium for the Cadillacs. Of course, I should say, four different teams split by 5.6 seconds at the end of the line in a race that didn't end on the yellow flags is incredible, especially in a 24-hour race, because I've seen plenty of sprint races end in greater distances and all that. In terms of the balance of power that Andy was talking about, I am glad, as it were, to see IMSA take that step, because as you say, there is a big push, I know, from at least from my side and the single-seater side, for the FIA to basically have a iron fist over anything that happens, single-seater wise. As a result, to see such an independent movement not only do well but thrive on the sports car scene, I think is fantastic, because it gives drivers, teams, manufacturers great options when it comes to where to put their money, where to put their talent. And the Raw and the 24 Hours itself presents itself as one of the golden children of IMSA that has time and time again proven that you don't need a centralized authority in France, as it were, to dominate proceedings. But you are right with the ACO's involvement, and that is a very interesting line that we'll see prop up again with the IMSA series as time moves forward. The only other thing I'll say on what Andy was saying was with the qualifying format, in that I think it was fine in the sense of I didn't see anything dramatically wrong with it. I know what you mean about 24-hour races being having the team sandbag during qualifying, and obviously you don't want to see too many just hold back performance for the sake of it. But I don't believe that having the cars show their hand early negatively affected the race on Sunday in any way. Okay.
And Ross McIntyre, I don't know if you watched the entirety. Maybe wasn't as hardcore as Andy Lloyd was. You're not expected to be honest. I mean, I certainly didn't watch all of the race, but as an endurance. I suppose
appreciate.
I wouldn't call you a fanatic. I mean, I know you love Formula One and F2, especially. I'll call you an endurance casual fan. Maybe.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. I'll give you that.
Your thoughts on what happened in the Rolex 24 at the weekend?
I mean, for me, the Rolex 24 is one of my favourite events of the year. Not only does it get the season started off good and proper, but it's always a great race. I think IMSA always put on a brilliant show. We've all been over this with the other two guys already, but IMSA have always put on a brilliant show. Daytona in itself is such a spectacular track. It's such a spectacular circuit with these cars going around. And this year, once again, no different. A brilliant just treat of a race. I mean, when you look at the results, the first four DPIs all finishing on the same lap. The first four LMP2s all finishing on the same lap. It was ridiculously tight across all the classes. Again, the GTDs was decided by a last lap incident at the, it was called the Boston, the Le Mans chicane. It was ridiculously close. And again, I'm probably not as well, versed in the endurance racing scene as Andy, but, I still very much enjoy it. I do a lot of commentary over esports endurance in my spare time as well. So I have that kind of esports background, so I kind of vaguely know what's going on. So I can get by, is what I'm trying to say. And as well, when you look at the names, of course, the Rolex 24, it's one of the biggest. Well, it's the first kind of big circuit event of the year. Okay, obviously it opens up with the Rally Monte Carlo. You've got the Royal before the 24, then you've got the Daytona 24, and it kicks off the whole Daytona February month that culminates in the Daytona 500 in NASCAR. Even for your most casual of motorsport fans, just to look at the list, you don't even have to have watched the race. You don't have to know that the race is a thing. To look through the list of names, that entered into this event, you're going to be going, oh, okay, this is quite serious. I mean, the winning car of Blancpain, Castroneves, Ollie Jarvis, and Simon Pagenaud. That already out of the box is, it's got quite a strong team. And just to touch something that Andy said earlier, actually, we actually, if we're taking the nationalistic route on this one, Britain had the highest percentage of drivers on the podium, because we had 4 drivers on the podium in Tom Blancpain, Ollie Jarvis, Will Stevens, and Richard Westbrook.
DPI.
And in DPI, that is, thank you. Oh, overall podium, thank you, Connor. And in DPI, and then the next closest, there was a tie between the United States and France with 3 apiece. So well done us, I suppose. Clearly killing it in the endurance racing scene. Again, even though I'm an endurance casual as well, I always tend to focus on LMP2. I'm a bit of an LMP2 fanboy. And again, as I said, LMP2, very, very close once again. Dragon Speed taking the win in their number 81 car, Orica. And again, that was the car with Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward. So I think a few people were expecting them to do quite well. Of course, Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward are 2 of the biggest names in IndyCar right now. And 2 very, very good drivers. And they've shown that, these young talents out there very much improving. To take that win under a lot of pressure was a great job as well. One driver that tickled my interest in that car was Devlin De Francesco. He's a driver I've been following since 2016, back in his British Formula 4 days.
Yeah, he had the punch up for those who.
Yeah, he did have the punch up. Well remembered. I can't even remember who it was. It was Florescu, yeah.
For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it was at a BTCC event at Knock Hill. The 2 tangled together, being young hotheads, and what was his first name? Petrescu.
Petru.
It's Petru Florescu.
Florescu, whatever his name. Yeah. Anyway, and the 2 literally had a fight in front of the camera.
You can go watch on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
It's very funny.
I'm sure both have moved on since those days.
Of course.
They wouldn't appreciate you bringing that up. How dare you, Ross?
Of course. But I mean, I wasn't saying that I remember Devlin from his punch up. I was just saying, he's been a driver that, I remember back from his British Chef 4 days. I remember seeing him back then and going, oh yeah, he's not too bad. He could go places. So to see him, getting a class win in such a big event, that was, it warmed my little heart just a little bit. And again, even in LMP2, you've still got massive names. You've got the racing team Netherlands guys who came in second. They always turn up with a big squad of basically everyone who's good in the Netherlands that does endurance racing as well. In the Town Motorsport car that finished in P3, you got Ferdinand Habsburg, who, isn't a bad driver. If you didn't know, is technically heir apparent to the Austrian throne, I think. Yeah, exactly. So not too bad. And to be fair, he's not actually a bad peddler. He's done all right in some GT4 stuff and, got a podium in an LMP2, so clearly not too bad there. That's part of the appeal of the Rolex 24 is, because it's the first event of the year, all the names show up. A lot of the guys who think about going into IMSA full time or getting ready to enter the World Endurance Championship for the first time, they come here especially for this event. Fernando Alonso rocks off years ago, did nothing, by the way. I think the car got a puncture and then broke down like halfway through. But the point is that if you're aiming to do something in endurance this season, or you're already a well-established endurance driver, the chances are that you're probably going to be in the Rolex 24. And I think that's what makes it so special. It's not that it's just the first event back. It's not that it's such a big event, and it's the fact, it's a big 24-hour race to kick off the season, a brilliant circuit, lots of fast cars, big field. It's the fact that because it's the first race season and because the drivers are, they're sick and tired of the off season, everyone and their mum rolls up to have a go. You just get this absolute concoction of fantastic drivers just rocking up and giving it a go. And, again, there's so many drivers that I could list and go, yeah, they're quite good.
We will go through and list all the ones and go, oh, he did a good job, or she actually did a good job. And that's what we'll do now, in fact. I've just been reminding myself of how some of the Brits got on. And when I say remind myself, I was literally like, I actually forgot that he was racing. And, Tom Gamble was in the race. And, just names all the way, like you say, I mean, everybody said it so far that, maybe one of the most impressive entry lists of the entire year, perhaps, just because everybody's available, everybody just wants to go racing for the first time in the year. Shout out, by the way, everybody missed, including myself as well. I think 4th place overall, Mike Conway, another Brit.
Yeah, Mike Conway as well. Yeah, he was in there.
Yeah. Hi, Mike. A standout British performance for British driver for you, Andy Lloyd, let's do drivers for now.
Well, I think, you've got to look at Ollie Jarvis in the Meyer Shank Racing Acura. I mean, that was a standout performance. They had to drag that car from they were down the class after about 3 hours after they had a puncture. And they said after the race that the whole team, drivers, engineers, mechanics, everybody had to execute perfectly after that. And they did, and they were metronomic in that, and they got that car. So you've got to say that, Ollie Jarvis was a standout performance. You've also got to look at Richard Westbrook in the 05 JDC Miller Cadillac, racing alongside Tristan Vautier, Lloyd Duval and Ben Keating. Finished in third, just under 4.5 seconds behind the winner. He pushed very, very hard in the qualifying race, and that was a standout performance. But if you're looking sort of down the grid, there's so many British names. If you look at the LMP2 class, you had Harry Tinknell in the 11, PR1, Matthias and Orica. They finished 8th in class, 88 laps off the class winner. Kyle Tilley and Radiel in the 18 era motorsport car. The car that probably disappointed for British drivers in that class was the 22 United Autosports entry, Guy Smith and Phil Hanson, both very quick drivers. Phil's been victorious at WEC and European Le Mans Series, although he's still a young driver for quite a few seasons now. Probably not what they were looking for. But one name that stood out to me was in the LMP3 class was Seb Prio. Yeah, I was going to... Channel Islands-based driver. He was over there. I mean, he is being... I hate the word groomed because of all the connotations it's got nowadays. But he is being developed, shall we say. Better word. With his dad keeping a very, very close eye on what's going on to be a top-level sports car driver. We've seen him in the UK. We saw him in British GT a couple of seasons ago in the GT4 Mustang. He raced in Porsche Carrera Cup North America last year and won that. He was in the 33 Sean Creech LMP3, and they finished second, just one lap off the class lead. And I think for a driver at that stage in his career, that was very, very well done. But you look down, James Collado in the 62 Ricci Ferrari, finished second in the GTD Pro class. GTD had more British drivers than you probably sometimes see on a British GT grid, I should think. Johnny Adam, I think, finished second, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Some disappointments there as well. Sandy Mitchell in the 39 Lamborghini, the car barn Lamborghini, that didn't finish. As you just said, Johnny Adam in the 44 Magnus Racing Aston finished second in the GTD class. One of the teams that I was very impressed with was the Inception Racing McLaren that had Ollie Milroy, Brendan Aribi, Frederick Schandorf and Jordan Pepper. They finished fifth. They missed a podium by just 2.5 laps. That team, which is run by Optimum Motorsport up in Wakefield, it has worked so hard over the last 5-6 seasons to the point where they're pretty much racing almost in every championship all over the world at some stage during the season, pushing very hard. Just a shame that they just couldn't get that podium. David Pittard in the 98 Northwest AMR Aston finished 12th in class. Some interesting discussions, announcements before the race that he'd been given an Aston Martin factory drive and that he was now an Aston Martin factory driver. It transpires today that maybe the message was a little bit miscommunicated, that through no fault of David Pittard's, but he's not actually an Aston Martin factory driver. He is a driver employed by Northwest Aston Martin Racing. You could argue what the difference is. I'll give him that, to be honest. I mean, apparently there is a difference. Oh. So I think it was fantastic to see the British flag flying over Daytona, and some really good results. Yeah, David Pittard, lovely lad, as I think has been mentioned many times before on Motorsport Radio, and I congratulated him on that drive as well on Facebook. Like, well done. Did he respond is the question. I think he liked it, thumbs up. But one other driver that I always like to keep an eye out for in the BMW. I think he finished 9th overall, Nick Yellerly. Hey ho.
Yeah. I mean, for you, Connor, moving on, same question, I suppose. For you, if you had any particular favourite Brits coming into this race, how did they do?
I think Andy has just about listed every Brit there is on.
Greedy, isn't he? There you go.
I did want to give a shout out to James Collado, because I think he always goes a little under the radar sometimes with that that Ferrari Works outfit. I know he's done a lot of work in there for the last must be good 8 years now. He's been with some sort of Ferrari outfit. Congratulations on him for getting another podium. I think he's a very good, consistent GT racer, and I think he very much goes underappreciated sometimes. In that sense, I mean, further down, as you say, there was some nice drives. I wanted to point out Johnny Adam, as was already mentioned. Ross Gunn, his fellow British GT counterpart, was also racing, although I believe his day ended slightly less successfully, as it were. It was more sort of a congratulations on being there than anything. But unfortunately, an accident took his Hearts of Racing team out of the event. But no, as you say, there's plenty of other talent, even if they didn't quite make the flag. I mean, even if we're talking GTD racing, Catherine Legg and Stefan Wilson again were present. But no, I think we've already gone through a lot of the successful, as it were, British talents that managed to perform on the day. And yeah, I'm generally happy with how the event went with everyone. Of course, I suppose in that case, there's a shout out to United Autosports, the British LMP2 team, even if they did finish, I'll say quite a bit off the pace, let's say, of their Dragon Speed winners. But again, hey-ho, good result for a lot of people, and hopefully we can see some of them at a more regular rate in the IMSA class, because one of the things I do like about IMSA is just obviously the talent pool that they have. But I will say it's always disappointing after we get the big hoo-ha of the Daytona 24 hours. We then go to the second round of IMSA, and 2/3 of the drivers are gone. Then I'm aware it's like the Le Mans 24-hour effect, which is, everyone shows up for the Le Mans, but who shows up for the the Bahrain 6 hours the week after type thing. And I'm sure Andy can expand on this a little bit more, but it would be nice to see some of these cars and teams come back for more regular competition in this championship, and not for just the big trophy event that this is.
Yeah, it would be, but I mean, it's, as you say, it's kind of like the Le Mans effect, isn't it? Really, it will be interesting to see as the two top classes converge with the common goal of winning at Le Mans, whether that leads to more consistency in the IMSA classes. But yeah, and of course, when we go to Sebring, that weekend is shared with the opening round of the FIA WC, if I'm not mistaken. So there's going to be lots of drivers doing double duty come that weekend.
I can't imagine 2 endurance races on the same weekend is going to fare well for people. Well,
if you jump on a plane and run over to the other one, you might be able to catch them sleep on the flight, I reckon. If you're feeling really brave,
common, though, isn't it? It's been done many times where there's been like a European Le Mans race at Monza, and there's been like a British GT or some other thing in another country, and one driver does one day and then nips on a jet.
I remember there being a story, I can't remember who it was, but I remember when the Monaco Grand Prix used to take place on the same day as Indy 500 qualifying, that someone did Monaco, then immediately after race got on a plane, flew to Indianapolis, and then did qualifying for the Indy 500. I think I can't remember who it was back in the 60s, but that's pretty impressive.
It always used to be, and I'm not sure if the calendar falls the same way, that the IMSA round at Detroit Belle Isle Park fell on the same weekend as the Le Mans test weekend, which was typically a fortnight before the race weekend, and many drivers literally got out their cars, ran to a private jet, jumped on it, and the jet raced across the Atlantic, landed in Le Mans. They jumped out, ran into their race car, and tested at Le Mans. So I'm not sure how the calendar falls this year, but that was certainly used to be a highlight of some racing drivers' year.
Well, one particular. Sorry, Ross, I neglected to ask you regarding British drivers, and just because, as we touched on, really, I mean, Andy, we rely on Andy for a deep dive into analysis and such, and by the time Andy's finished, he's sort of stole everyone's thunder, so which is great, Andy. We're not complaining.
I'll take that as a point from next week as well. I'll shut up earlier.
No.
Andy, we love having you on. You're the best.
But Ross, for you, I mean, standout British performances in the race, if you do have any to choose, who were they? What were they?
I mean, again, they've all kind of been a bit stolen, I think. I thought, you know, again, Collado did a really good job done in GT Pro. I thought, you know, he was a big stand-up for me. I thought Ben Barnicoat as well was pretty good. He's usually pretty strong, to be fair, but I thought he put on a good showing. To who I was, you know, a bit disappointed by, to be fair, through no fault of his own, I think the car ran into trouble. Nick Tandy, I've always got my eye out for Nick Tandy. You know, I don't really, you know, I'm not really a fan of any drivers per se, but then, you know, I have a few that I like, and Nick Tandy's one of them. I've always, you know, got my eye out for him, seeing what he's doing. Unfortunately, the car just, you know, they ran into trouble. The pace wasn't quite there as well, so that was a shame to see them, you know, languishing down the order. They did finish, but it was a couple hundred laps down, I think, in the end. But yeah, I think, you know, again, they've all kind of been stolen a little bit, really. Stefan Wilson as well was in there. That's, you know, not that bad. You know, good to see that he's still going out there, still pedaling, still doing all right. But yeah, I think the standout one for me as well, just because Collado has been taken, I'd probably just say Ben Barnicoat. But, you know, there was a couple of good ones. Alex Lynn as well. Again, the car wasn't, you know, particularly strong, but, you know, he did a pretty good job over in DPI. And, of course, all the millions of Brits who had finishing well in DPI. I'll stick with my guns. I'll go with Ben Barnicoat just because no one else has actually mentioned it for some reason, which I think is a bit unfair because I thought he did quite a good job.
I think your point about Ben Barnicoat is very well made. That was an excellent drive and an excellent performance by that team. And bearing in mind that he's moved from a McLaren factory drive, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
This is his first year in the Lexus to finish fourth in class. I think it was just under 7.5 seconds off the lead. That was very impressive, and that car looked racy all week. So I think he's set up for hopefully a very good season with that team, and maybe a career with Lexus moving forward.
Oh, fingers crossed. Again, Ben is another Barnicoat. I tried to say Ben is another driver, and it came out as Ben is another Barnicoat. Ben is another driver who, again, I do like to keep an eye on, and I think he's a popular driver as well. He's always you know, been seen on quite fairly by fans and the media alike. And yeah, again, as you said, you know, he spent years as a McLaren factory driver, so he's, you know, to be jumping into a new car, a new team after so long, it's going to be, you know, quite difficult settling into, you know, to put in a really good performance, as you said, finish fourth in class, only a couple seconds off the leaders. Yeah, and again, as you said as well, it was looking racy all weekend. So yeah, I think, you know, it's big things to come from Ben Barnicoat with this Lexus squad, presuming he stays with them. And I think, you know, I'm very excited to see what it can hold for the future. Again, we know he's a driver with a lot of talent. You know, he was always very, very strong behind the wheel in the McLaren. I just guess we've got to wait and see. But again, it's a good start, and, you know, hopefully shows good things for the future at the Lexus team.
One of many Barnicoats.
One of many Barnicoats.
Talking next regarding Andy BMW and their performance. Now, BMW, I'm not going to say anything. I'll let you do the with the judgment. You can come down on them or not. Well, I'll ask it this way. Will they be happy with their performance at the Rolex?
I think the simple answer is no, they won't. You know, BMW in GT racing is used to success. However, this is, you know, one of the first outings of that new M4 GT3, the first major outing, and you're going to find problems. I think it was sad for Mike Crack, as it was his last outing with the team before he moves over to, is it Aston Martin he's going to in F1?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think he was sorry to go out on that because it wasn't the performance that they wanted. But at the same time, I would say, well, let's have the same conversation in 12 months' time when they've got that car sorted.
Yeah, quite true.
And they're probably going to be on the podium every single week. So after, it was disappointing, but it's the start of a program. It was interesting what IMSA were doing with balance of performance just ahead of the race, because I did read that they had added some weight to the BMW and the Corvette and reduced the rear wing angle. So I'm guessing that's going to make them slightly quicker down the straight and maybe slightly slower around the corners. Whether they thought there was any kind of sandbagging going on during the qualifying race, who knows? It was interesting that both of those new entrants into this class both struggled, both over the Raw and the race. But they will come back. That's a very strong squad. I'd be very surprised if they were having the same problems come Sebring in a few weeks.
Okay, yeah, and just from scanning the results, I think it was 7th in class, I think. The highest place BMW in the race, and that was the 7th in class it was.
That was the 25 car. The 25 and the 24 car finished 9th. But I mean, 23 laps down and 46 laps down. It's clearly that's not what you want to come away from the Rolex with. So they'll be back.
Connor, was you keeping an eye on the new BMW?
I didn't know the ins and outs of the new BMW. I knew they were developing, obviously, one for this for this 24-hour race. I suppose in a way it might cement Mike Crack's involvement with the team, because I assume that he didn't have much involvement in the later stage of the production of this car, because he would have been in discussions with Aston Martin, and assumably those in the know in BMW would have been casually not been giving him too many ins, as it were, to the new project, just in case of knowledge transfer and all that. So as a result, Mike could perhaps come away from this weekend and go, well, look, this is what happens when I'm not 100% involved and committed to the team. I don't know, maybe I'm clutching at straws with that one, but actually, I certainly wouldn't blame it on the drivers, because you look at, as you say, the factory drivers they have and have had for years. Augusto Farfus and Conor De Felipe have been, big standout American IMSA drivers, as it were, for a couple of years. And even in the 24 car, you had, I said, drivers like Shelton Van der Linde and Philip Eng, who have done endurance racing and touring car GT racing for donkey's years now. So there's certainly nothing to be said about, say, a rookie lineup that would be easy to blame this on. So if anything, the blame has to be sort of squarely at the door of BMW, and they need to be questioning what happened at this weekend, because as I say, maybe there were slight issues with the balance of performance, and it'll be interesting to see what IMSA do at the next round at Sebring to balance it all up again. But until that point, BMW are very much on the back foot, and it's a long season, but it's not that long. And if I don't know what their 3-5 year plan is with this car, but if you've come out the gates and you're already stumbling, what does that say for the next couple of years' development and where you can really take this car?
Not mercy from Connor
in the future. This is I'm aware I'm probably putting a bit of a nail in the door.
No, you've already finished 7th. Pack home, go home. The whole project's ruined.
No, it's not like that. But yeah, it's something they're going to have to address quickly. Otherwise, it's going to become a staple for the season, and in which case you're just committing yourself then to 2023.
Right. Well, that's told BMW.
Well, I won't be hired by BMW. I get it. Okay.
Well, anyway, I'm more of...
Sorry, Andy.
I'll join Andy on the fence and say that perhaps, they've got a lot of potential, and they might do well, in future events. I'm sure they actually will do well. BMW, Ross.
I hope they do well.
Well, yeah. Why wouldn't they? Nick Yellerly, as I mentioned earlier, was in the race.
Yeah, he was, funnily enough, because we were talking about him.
I like Nick.
He is all right. You know, he's pretty fast as well.
I think he's still doing some forcing.
Aston Martin, yeah, he's Aston Martin's test and simulator driver.
Yeah,
and he rocked up at the young driver. No, not yet. It's post-season test is now called the F1 post-season test last year, and everyone was a bit like, because I don't think anyone was expecting him to be there. But he did.
Like 33 now.
Yeah, because he's 33. It was kind of because it was a weird format. I know this isn't the F1 show, that was last night, but it was a weird format. We had one car running the 18-inch tyres, which they got bring in for next year, which was to be run by a current driver, and then the other car, which was your 2021 car, was run by a young driver, and they stuck him in the 18-inch wheel car, and everyone was a bit like, what? It was a bit confusing, but, you know, he did all right.
Are we implying that Nick Yeloli and Mike Crack have a connection? And
maybe they do.
That's the whole reason that Mike Crack was hired by Aston Martin.
Aston Martin BMW, maybe.
It was because of Nick Yeloli.
He knows. He might have slid a word in. He might have gone up to Lawrence and be like, "Hey, listen, I know you're looking to replace Otmar. I've got this bloke here. He's quite good. Give him a ring." Yeah, BMW. Let's get back to the issue at hand here. Again, I'm a bit of a BMW fanboy, as I am with LMP2s. So I always like to see the BMWs doing well. And again, this is. I think I'm going to agree with you. I don't think I'm going to be on the fence. I think I'm going to say that BMW should be disappointed with this result, but I'm also going to agree with you, Andy and Lester, in the fact that this is also going to be a learning year for BMW. Of course, this the new M4 GT3 that they're born, replacing the successful, albeit very outdated M6 GT3, which they ran for donkey's years at this point. I remember when they announced the car, a lot of people weren't entirely happy with the call to make it an M4. I think a lot of it was just in regards to the new visual updates that they have to the front of the new M4 road car, which a lot of people don't know. I think on the race car, by the way, it looks fantastic. Again, I don't like the big grilly thing on the road car, but on the race car, very good. And I don't think people were just particularly liking the idea of downsizing the GT3 car, especially when BMW traditionally ran their M4 over in DTM back when they were still running Class 1 regulations in that. And again, the tests were, there was a few Nürburgring tests that we didn't hear much about. The game got released the car actually got released before it came out in real life, before they'd actually, finished producing it in real life on simulators. iRacing managed to get all the data off of BMW and actually built the car in sim. A lot of people said it drove very well. It was pretty competitive, and that again, that is a simulator. You can't say everything about it, but it was pretty competitive. And BMW also had they've got some deal with a company that produces sim racing hardware, where that company actually produces the wheel for the car, and the wheel for the car can actually be used on a simulator. So it's kind of cool for any fellow sim nerds out there. So it was a weird kind of development process for the car. Again, it was kept very, very under wraps, which is very strange. For such an exciting new GT3 car coming. GT3 cars typically have quite a long lifespan. So when we see a new car coming in, it's very exciting. Brand new BMW M4 coming in, replacing the M6. This was big stuff for BMW, and it was kind of kept very quiet. I mean, again, with the Nürburgring test, we only really found out they happened through a couple photos. There was no data, no response from the drivers about how it felt. It was very, very quiet. Literally a couple of photos. So I think they weren't turning up at Daytona thinking they were going to walk over the 1-2. I don't think that was the goal. I think the goal was more than anything probably to finish the race. They'll have done 24-hour sims before, I'm sure, but just finish the race, bring it home, and they did that, yeah. But once you finish the race, you start to think, could we have done better? Could we have done worse? Looking at it, the cars that BMW, they're run by Rahul Letterman Racing, and they are a very competitive, they're a very, very strong team. They've been traditionally strong in basically anything they enter a car into, and again, a very, very decent lineup as well for the squad. It was a very
you've gone quiet, Ross. I don't know. Or have I gone quiet? Yeah, anyway, silence by technology. BMW. But you can still hear me though, Connor.
I can, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah, sorry. It just,
okay, good.
Just when Ross went in his little box, it suddenly went silent. Freaked me out a little bit. Anyway, we'll take that opportune moment to sort of segue on, if you don't mind, Ross. Good, he thumbs up for that. I'll let you go and unplug your mic and plug it in again. Moving on to something that I think we've already touched on previously, and I think you've already mentioned it, but I just want to get a definitive answer, Andy, from you. DPI driver of the race, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the obvious choice would be to go for somebody from the winning car, Oliver Jarvis, very good driver. I'm actually going to go for my driver of the race, only because I admire what he did. I'm just having a quick look before I talk absolute nonsense.
It is a personal preference.
I'm just going to ask and see if I'm back.
Yeah, you are. Hi.
Yeah, brilliant. Hello.
My driver of the race is going to be Ben Keating, who did double duty. He was in the 5 car, the JDC Motorsports Cadillac that finished third, the Vautier Westbrook Duval car, and he was also in the. I'm looking at the LMP2 class. Where in the 4th place, PR1 Matheson Orica. Now, Ben Keating is a businessman. He runs a number of motor dealerships. Very, very keen racer, obviously. I had the pleasure of bumping into him at Le Mans in 2019 when he campaigned the only Ford GTE car that was ever allowed to race outside of the factory program. And it was a fantastic finish that year. Great racer. And I think for any businessman to enter the Rolex 24, I think is incredible. But to actually enter and drive 2 cars, I think is beyond incredible. So although he probably didn't get the result that he expected, I mean, he was certainly expecting to get a podium in the LMP2 class. My driver of the race in the DPI class is Ben Keating.
Wow, yeah, and to be honest, he's a name that, because I was looking at the Brits, to be honest, is someone that did fall outside of my radar. But same question for you, Connor. DPI driver of the race, in your opinion?
I will sort of half back up Andy in that Oliver Jarvis is probably the one we should all be looking at. In which case, that's probably a bit of an easy answer. But I do want to note that winning team overall. I know it's probably a little easy to say, but all 4 of those drivers are apply their trade quite often in single-seater racing. The most notable of which I think is Castroneves, who, as Andy pointed out earlier, is not the spring chicken that he once was anymore, and rather like Ben Keating, who has done well for himself at his age. Castroneves is continuing to prove himself to be one of the strongest at some of his strongest point, I should say, despite despite being in his mid-40s. Considering he won the Indianapolis not only 4 times, but did so last year as well. It's not as if he's, has historical records of this. But he is continuing
47.
to be... 47, thank you very much. Is continuing to be at the height of his powers all these years later. I think really is putting Helio's name stamping on the map of going, look, I am not just a second fiddle driver. I am the best Brazilian of this generation and of the last generation and of the generation before that. To now extend his winning record over effectively 4 different decades, the late 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now into the 2020s, I think says a lot about his caliber. And even if this particular race he was probably outshone by his teammate Oliver Jarvis for his amazing performances, I will say that Helio is a backbone of any team he enters.
Okay, fair enough. Good point. Well made. Sorry, that stat about him being 47 just blew my mind. Because I clicked on his profile. I thought he's like you said, early 40s or something. He's born in 1975. And it's not that old. 47. Oh my God. Ross, same question for you. DPI driver of the race.
I'm gonna pull one that you're all gonna hate for. I'm gonna go with Jimmy Johnson. He wasn't spectacular or anything. Bear with me on this one. But it's because he wasn't spectacular instead of totally terrible that I'm going for him, which is an improvement on what he was last year. Jimmy Johnson's venture into anything outside of NASCAR last year didn't quite go to plan. I think it's safe to say his IndyCar, it was fine but wasn't special, and then his IMSA really wasn't that great. But I think he put together a good showing. It's been a rough few years for Jimmy Johnson. He's still obviously got the passion to be racing. He still obviously loves the sport, because otherwise he'd have gone and retired with his millions of dollars back in like 2017, 2018. But, he's still going, still trying out new things. He's committed to a full-time IndyCar driver this year, so he's obviously very passionate about. Obviously, still got that driving. If that ability just isn't quite there anymore. As I said, last season was pretty dreadful for Jimmy Johnson, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't a good drive, but it wasn't bad, and that's what I'm going to give it to him, because it is an improvement over last year's IMSA part-time campaign. I think that's decent. And again, another old boy. He's getting well into his 40s at this point. But yeah, I think compared to last season, that was a great improvement. And again, it wasn't bad. The car unfortunately ran into some trouble again. They had a very, very strong driver lineup in the Ali Racing number 48. Kamoyo Kobayashi, Jose Maria Lopez, and Mike Rockenfeller alongside him. That is a team that on paper should be performing very, very well. They ran into trouble. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But I think overall it was okay. So that's why I'm giving it to him, simply because of the fact that last year was so terrible in comparison, that I think he gets the most improved award, and therefore my driver of the day. 24 hours, 2 days.
I'm not sure. Okay, yeah. We'll chart that one up as praise. Okay. Next question, Andy. LMP2 driver of the race for you.
Very difficult one. I'm going to go. I don't know who mentioned it. Racing. I've always got a bit of a soft spot for Racing Team Nederland. I like that team. They race very hard. It's Frits van Eert, who I think his day job is running a huge supermarket chain called Jumbo in Holland. But goes racing at the very highest levels. It is always very competitive. He would possibly be one of my. Can you see a kind of a theme here of going for older drivers? But he would be one of them. But I think there's a driver that I follow a lot in LMP2, which is Paul-Loup Chassin, who was driving the 18 era motorsport car. He's a great driver. He was the quickest driver in the class. He put in a solid 250 laps. The car DNF'd. His wife is almost on the point of giving birth, and yet he had to be away from France for, probably over 2 weeks. That must have been tough for him. So, and he must be massively disappointed, because he worked really hard during that race. So my driver of the LMP2 class is Paul-Loup Chassin.
Fair enough, yeah. And any news on the baby? Or?
Not that I've seen on social media, although they may not be putting the news on social media. They may be keeping it private. But the last update I saw was that she hadn't quite given birth, but she was obviously close to that point. So it must be any day soon, I'd have thought.
Well, very good. Congratulations. Now, Connor, same question for you. LMP2 driver of the race in the 2022 Rolex 24 Hours.
I'll probably have to stick with the winning team on this one and just say Devlin De Francesco. I know he was sort of mentioned earlier about his past, but Devlin is one of those drivers who in my opinion, I didn't think an awful lot of during his junior career. He wasn't really making great strides, and especially during his single-seater time.
He was quite short. Sorry, that was the heightest joke.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry.
I don't think De Francesco was, a flashy driver in his youth, and as a result, I could easily have seen him, petering out as a lot of young drivers do, and we not hear of him. However, he has done very well, I think, in recent years to rebuild his reputation, to have established himself as not just a competitor, but as a deserved competitor. His performance in Indy Lights in a couple seasons ago was very notable, and now I think this is has to be one of his crowning achievements of I have made it. He is not just there because he's a little more well off, let's say, than some of the other drivers around him. He's got there on actual merit. He is contributing to the team, and with that North American outfit with himself, Colton Herta, Eric Lux, and Pato O'Ward from the three North American nations. He's got to be delighted with that performance in the Oreca, and with the team finishing ahead of a very competitive LMP2 field, he's got to really think about this as a future career for him, and hopefully we can see him for many years to come in the LMP2 class with much success.
Yeah, I did have to check first time I'd heard that Eric Lux was racing. It's not the Eric Lux of I think Genie Capital fame, who famously had a fight with a Formula One driver.
What is it with you and fights today?
I don't know.
He's been watching boxing clips on YouTube, probably.
But it's a different Eric Lux who was on the same team as De Francesco. Ross, LMP2 driver of the entire race.
I'm going to give it to Colton Herta, mainly because I'm usually quite critical of him. Basically, I don't think he is the gifted son that most people think that he is. I don't think he's what people think he's going to be. I don't think he's the next great American savior of Formula One. That I think he's. Yeah, I just don't think he's all that essentially. But you know what? Although that was quite a good performance, again, wasn't the best performance in the LMP2 category, but I think just personally...
But you're choosing him for the drive... Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like a similar reason to the Jimmy Johnson thing. Not he didn't have a terrible season last year. It's just the fact that I'm usually quite critical of him, and it was actually quite a good performance, and I was quite impressed. And again, Andy and Connor made two, very, very good shouts there. So it's with me going last, it's quite hard to make some calls, but. It was just because I was personally impressed by Colton. Again, it wasn't, the finest drive of the field, but it was just, the personal impression it laid on it gave to me, that I think that's why I give him my driver of the day. Because again, I'm usually very, very critical of him. I mean, I usually am, well, I wouldn't say I'm not a fan, because I'm not a fan. I'm just not, I don't see where the praise comes from, if you know what I mean. It's not that I dislike him, I don't rate him that highly as a driver. But that was, I think, a very mature drive and a very deserved victory as well.
Despite your thoughts on him, yes.
Yes, despite my thoughts on him.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. I did ask, I suppose. Andy, the... GTD category, a lot of talk and expectation coming into the race about the class. Did it live up to expectations for you, in your mind?
Oh, I think it lived up to expectations by about 100 times, to be honest. Hugely competitive. We saw one of the most spectacular ends to a GT3 race one of the few that I've ever seen. It was a brave move on behalf of IMSA to move the class that way. And they had a huge grid, and the racing was great. So you have to say it was a huge success. I wasn't surprised, because the very nature of GT3 racing is that you balance performance so that everybody races on a relatively level playing field. So you're not going to get one team running away with it and everybody else chasing after them. And that was exactly what we saw on Sunday with the finish to that race. I think IMSA will be delighted at what happened. IMSA, I think, is a very commercially focused organisation. When they make changes to how they structure things, they take all the stakeholders into consideration. So the manufacturers, the teams, the fans, the promoters. And they spoke very carefully with the manufacturers and said, look, if we go down this route, will you support it? And I think, like in the way that you see packed grids in GT3 racing, well, I say packed grids in GT3 racing across the world, you certainly do in Europe, and you certainly do in the Middle and Far East. Not necessarily the same as to what we've seen in American racing with GT World Challenge America, but nevertheless, this was a fantastic success, and I think it sets up a great year of racing this year in the IMSA GTD categories.
Yeah, certainly, Connor. GTD class for you over the course of the race. What did you make of it?
Well, I think all of the world's eyes were on the GTD class. It was certainly the first thing I saw on social media after the race was that dramatic finish between the number 9, FAF Motorsports Porsche and the number 2 KCMG, also a Porsche. So it's a great advert, I think, for those two. Of course, great disappointment for the number 2, who had been leading right up until the closing couple laps, thanks to some incredible drives from those drivers. But it was the number 9 that really made a name for themselves by, not only overtaking with a lap and a half to go, but dramatically holding on when the number 2 tried to hit back at the bus stop chicane, and it didn't go down well. For Felipe Nazar, who was driving the number 9 for FAF Motorsports, first time he's been driving the GT cars. He's obviously been a notable DPI and LMP driver for a couple of years now. Prior to that, he was a Formula 1 driver. For a lot of drivers, going from an LMP car to a GT car can almost feel, especially when you had a factory drive before that, can feel like a bit of a downgrade. And we've seen this before with certain drivers not quite gelling or getting on well with their GT drivers, and not being able to handle the fact that they are not the fastest car on track anymore. They do have to deal with traffic a lot more. However, I think Felipe did a fantastic job in adapting to the new environment that he's in and the new Porsche team that he is ultimately now a part of for that race. So in terms of how the class went, I think it was obviously a great advert for a lot of the class. Four teams finished all on the same lap, that being the 2 Porsches I mentioned. Risi Competizione, Ferrari 488 actually finished second after that collision, demoting the number 2 down to 3rd place. And of course, it was the double British drivers of Ben Barnicoat and Jack Hawksworth in the Vassar Sullivan with the Lexus, my apologies, who also finished on the same lap. So those 4 really making sure that there are 3 different manufacturers in the first 4 places. That is what you want from a GT class like this. I know we've had it in the past where we've seen the Cadillacs and the Porsches do very well, but in separate years. And so we don't often see all of these manufacturers really have a chance of winning right up until the closing couple laps. And that, I think, is vital for how they run the GTT Pro class. The one thing I will mention is how different I know the American IMSA class run it compared to, say, the World Endurance Championships Pro and Am version. There is a lot less speed difference between the Pro and Ams. Yeah, it's not even called AMS in IMSA. I know it's just the GTT category, and I'm sure Andy can correct me or expand on whatever I'm saying at the end of this. But the fact there was only 4 laps difference between FAF Motorsports GTT Pro class and the GTD winner of Wright Motorsports, I think says a lot about how similarly those cars are operated and are run and are driven by the drivers that are in them, and that essentially it does come down to driver performance a lot more than I would say it comes down to driver performance more in GTT Pro than it does in DPI.
Okay, thank you for that, Connor. And quickly, I mean, we've got lots to talk about still, and not that much time, to be honest. I mean, I suppose we could talk about it. I mean, but Andy's got work in the morning, so so we were under a strict, let's say, just over an hour. We've been on so far. But Ross, same question for you. In the category, in the GP. GTD. There you go. What did you make of the racing action that you saw at the weekend?
It was very good. The GT classes over in Daytona. It's usually very exciting. It's usually one of the ones to keep your eye on because Daytona is a track that is very rewarding for GT racing. And, it offers close racing, exciting racing, and it's also a track that is very neutral as well. So you see lots of different manufacturers arriving and being strong there. Yes, as I think you said that GT racing is all about trying to be equal and, of course, balance performance. But, at the same time, each car has its own little quirks. Each car is going to be somewhere different, in terms of the grid when it turns up to each track. Daytona is very neutral in that regard. It really allows the cars to come together. It is one of the most neutral circuits, in fact, on the IMSA calendar, full stop, in that cars really are very equal across the board, even with balanced performance factors out. In general, it's a very, very close track for GT racing. Again, what we saw here was a brilliant race, and as I said, very, very close. The race was decided by an incident with about a mile to go coming into the Le Mans chicane. And even with that, the top four cars finishing on the same lap once again. And then, the car in fifth was only 2 laps down, so still very, very close indeed. That was up in GTD Pro, that was. So, lots of good racing, lots of close racing, lots of exciting racing as well. But the best part about the GT is it just causes havoc for the faster classes. That's why they're there. It's to cause havoc for the fast classes. That's why we watch it. The racing's close, but it's also funny watching drivers and cars with twice as much horsepower, half the weight, failing to get past a big old Bentley or something that that's going 20 miles an hour around a hairpin. It's a great laugh. And they serve that role very well at Daytona as well. And even with that, they're still very fast around there as well. There's still all that big banking section. They can get a lot of speed down. Just recalling, actually, a few years ago, one of the Corvette teams released. They had a GoPro on one of their drivers' helmet. It escaped who it was, and they had I think it's like an hour video on YouTube of them doing laps in night practice around Daytona. Go watch that, because it really gives a perspective into, it is tricky for GT drivers at Daytona. Even with all the fun and the games, and it's really interesting to see it from their perspectives, and it's really interesting to see endurance racing from a GT driver's perspective as well. But yeah, I had a great time watching them. Again, it's I do love a good bit of GT racing anyway. Throw some faster cars in the mix and it gets even more exciting. And again, very, very close race, very, very dramatic final lap. And we saw some really good drives in it as well, some really good teamwork, some really good drives. So there was a few very, very strong cars out there as well that at any point of the race could have been winning. So for it to be that close at the end, I think really is a really good thing for the GTD class, as it's now known, and as IMSA enters this new GT3 only era. I think is a really good thing. And again, great racing on offer, and I'm very excited to see what the GTD class can offer for the rest of the season.
Yeah, keep it tuned, because the editor of endurance and GT.co.uk, Andy Lloyd, will no doubt be here to tell us all the ups and downs of those teams and that class. And, not many questions left to go, but one thing I wanted to ask you again, Andy, Corvettes.
Yeah.
For you, for your money, your opinion on them.
they admitted it was disappointing. Once you start hearing teams talk about, it's an extended TED session, that something has not gone right. They've taken their GTE class, their GTE cars, and they converted them back to GT3. They were on the back foot pretty much all weekend. I think they had an alternator issue in one car. They had contact and damage in the other car, and the team was just left very, very frustrated. It was a shame, because we've enjoyed in past years dramatic battles with the Corvettes at the front of the GT classes, GT as it was then. So yes, not the weekend they wanted, but again, that particular Corvette is a relatively new car, and they're trying to do different things with it. A lot of parts were swapped out from the GT car to get it back into GT3 spec, and I just don't think they'd had enough an opportunity to get them really settled down and get that car going. But they'll be back. I think it's very much like BMW, very similar tale. Given the time, they will get that car sorted, no doubt about it.
Okay. Fair enough. Ones to watch, let's say, later in the year. Or should they scrap the whole thing, Connor Jackson?
What, scrap IMSA? Or
no, the Corvettes.
I was about to say, what do you want about?
After the performance. What did you make of them?
I was about to say, after my BMW comments, I think I am banned from commenting on any sort of manufacturer's ability. I think like BMW, Corvette have a lot of history behind them, especially with this series, especially with this 24-hour event. So I don't think we'll be seeing the last of them in the same way that we won't be seeing the last of the BMWs. But I will, for fairity, I will give them the same warning, which is if they can't get on top of their problems by the end of the following round, then something has to be said about their season, considering this is a significant chunk of, I assume, where their sponsorship comes, and also where a lot of the points will come from for the season. And so it then becomes a bit of a numbers game, and just hoping the rest of the results go your way, which won't always be the case.
Okay. And Ross, do you have any comments or thoughts about how the Corvettes performed, underperformed maybe, perhaps?
It didn't go too well, did it, for the Corvettes? But we'll just have to kind of see how it goes, really. They kind of brought in this new car, which, as Andy said, they've made a GTE, had to turn it back to a GT3. Hasn't gone so well. Corvettes do typically run quite well at Daytona, so shame to see them languishing. Just have to see what happens over the rest of the year. They will turn it around. The Corvette teams, they always turn it around. They're very good at, turning their lows into highs very, very quickly. It's not been great at Daytona, but, just moving forward, they'll plow on. They'll get back up there. They always do. So, just stick with it. And, hopefully, fingers crossed, and it should turn good in the future.
But exactly when? Because there's a lot happening in the season, and looking at the calendar for the season for the IMSA WeatherTech Championship 2022. Did I say that right, Andy?
You did.
Yes, correct.
IMSA WeatherTech with a capital W and a capital T, yes. Sports car with a capital S and a capital C, Championship.
Indeed.
There's a lot to remember.
The next one on my schedule that I've got written down here, please correct me if I am wrong, March the 19th, it's Sebring, 12 hours. And that's...
Yes. I mean, another absolutely iconic track, the airfield circuit, the bumps in the concrete that everybody talks about. It's a fantastic race. Not a particularly picturesque circuit. Extremely flat. It is an airfield after all. But yeah, that's going to be a fantastic race. Really good.
And then in April, it's the Long Beach Grand Prix. And briefly, Andy, your thoughts on that? What can we expect? Any predictions, maybe?
Twisty-turny circuit. I think it'll be the third race of the season. So I think the GTD, the full season GTD entries will be really getting their car sorted by that. It's going to be very competitive. There will be contact. There will be tears. But we'll start to see really where the performance advantages are.
And then we get into the meat of the season in May. You got 2 events: Monterey, Mid Ohio, and then
Laguna Seca up to the Mid Ohio Sports Car Course, and then we run through Detroit, Bel-Air Park, Watkins Glen, Mosport, Lime Rock, Road America, VIR, Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. Just some great circuits. I've never spent a race season in America, but it is on my bucket list to do because all of those circuits are awesome.
Yeah, why not? Why not indeed? Sorry for whizzing through that calendar briefly, guys. I don't know if Connor...
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Just because, I mean, as I said, we could talk about this all night, and some nights we do. That's, I suppose, neatly brings us towards the end of tonight's show, which has strangely gone on for an hour and 15 minutes, and it feels like we've almost not even scraped the surface of, what happened in the race. But, hey-ho. There you go. So, Connor, overall final thoughts on the race and maybe the season ahead.
Indeed. Again, the race is another spectacular showcase of how sports car racing continues to thrive in times of in times of struggle. The series itself is one that continues to have great promise about it. And as you say, we've got a fantastic calendar ahead. The endurance races we've got coming up, the 12 hours of Sebring, the 6 hours event that we have in the middle of the season at Watkins Glen, and of course the Petit Le Mans, are all big showcase events that a lot of people, international and national, of course, tune in to see. And we, of course, will try and keep everyone up to date on how that goes. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to another season of IMSA. And, I think the momentum has to be with the Acura now after that performance. And hopefully we can see them and Cadillac fight it out over the course of the season. Maybe BMW as well. Indeed.
Who knows? Ross, rest of the season looking ahead, will you be marking this championship as one that you'll be keeping close tabs on?
Is that a silly question? Absolutely. IMSA it's a great championship. It's also one that's quite nice. When you just you're chilling on a Sunday night and you notice that IMSA's on, and you can just drift off gently to sleep as some race occurs in the background, as I've done many a time before. It's a great little. Well, I say little championship. It's a great big championship. Lots of very fast drivers, lots of very fast cars, and always very exciting racing as well. And it's a championship I very much enjoy. It's just a shame that it doesn't get that much coverage over in Europe. Again, being an American series, it's kind of where its target audience is. I'd love to see it on TV here in the UK. It isn't me. I have to rely on the internet and getting up on IMSA TV and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I will definitely be watching it going forward. We've had a great race to kick this season off, and once again, it's looking like 2022 is going to be an absolute belter of a year for IMSA, and it's going to go from strength to strength as it always does, and hopefully continues to grow and improve.
And final word to the editor of enduranceandgt.co.uk, Andy Lloyd. It's been a fantastic start to what could be a brilliant season.
Yes, a fantastic start. Yes, it's going to be a brilliant season. A brilliant start to the new GCT class. It's great to see the DPIs being so competitive. This is going to be a fascinating year because we're going to start getting information, news and testing of the new LMDH, let's drop that name, let's call them GTP, for next year. So that's going to be interesting. So I cannot wait to follow this season through to its conclusion.
Yeah, fantastic. And we will, as I mentioned earlier, be as keeping you up to date with what goes on in the IMSA WeatherTech Championship 2022. Excellent. And Josh Harrison will be back again, telling you more details about stuff that I probably can't tell you. Also, Andy, hopefully you'll be back as well later in, I don't know, maybe next week or whenever we're next doing a show.
Yes, well, of course, we've got the final round of the International GT Challenge coming up in Kyalami, the final round of the 2021 Championship. So for GT fans, that will be fascinating. So there's going to be lots to talk about in the days ahead.
Indeed, we will definitely talk about it. And keep up to date with motorsport.radio. Latest articles from Andy Lloyd, and in more depth, check out the enduranceandgt.co.uk website. And also you can download the archive of these shows as well, and maybe even watch, like, share, subscribe, and everything else. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Motorsport Radio, and we'll do it all again soon. Bye.
Motorsport Radio.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ray from the Kawasaki Racing Team.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Jamie Chadwick.
Hey everyone, I'm Bradley Smith.
Hi, I'm Joanne Zacco.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wright.
Hi, I'm Seb Morris.
Hi, I'm Dan Linfoot from Honda Racing British Superbike Team, and this is Motorsport Radio.